Hello, everyone. We're live again. I'm Daniel Rubenstein. This is the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's office. It is January 28th, 2025, and this is the live daily briefing. President Trump continues to share his ideas about how the people of Gaza can have better lives than the Hamas government has given them. Gaza is not a desirable place to live. Nobody wants to immigrate to Gaza. After 15 months of waging war against Israel, the Hamas government of Gaza remains the government of Gaza. And Hamas has no plan for how to make life better for the people in Gaza. President Trump said he would like to see Gazans living in an area where they can live without disruption and revolution and violence so much. Here's what everyone should know about the people of Gaza. The goal of most Palestinians in Gaza is to leave Gaza and move to Israel. Most Palestinians in Gaza do not believe that Gaza is their real home. They want to move to Israel and change Israel's name to Palestine. It's interesting that after President Trump suggested that some Palestinians in Gaza should be able to move to Egypt or Jordan and have better lives there than the Hamas government has given them in Gaza, suddenly a lot of people who support the Palestinian goal of no more Israel are now saying that Gaza is the home of the Palestinian people who live there. So this is what it took. Yes, Gaza is the home of Gazans. Their home is not in Israel. If Gazans want to make Gaza great again, it can't happen if they believe that their true home is in Israel. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments. The Prime Minister of Qatar just revealed something that the whole world should know. He said that Qatar wanted Hamas to face no consequences for the October 7th massacre, and that Qatar was pushing for Israel to surrender to Hamas one day after the massacre. Those weren't his exact words, but it is exactly what he meant. This is what the Qatari Prime Minister said about the hostage ransom deal. We've been calling since the beginning, since October 8th, that we need to get this done as soon as possible. Been calling since October 8th. The Qatari Prime Minister thinks that the proper response to the October 7th massacre was to get a deal done on October 8th that would ensure that Hamas leaders would survive what they had just unleashed, that thousands of convicted Palestinian terrorists would be released from Israeli prisons, and that Hamas's army would remain completely intact and would be in a position to carry out another massacre at a time and place of its choosing. That's what Qatar wanted to get done after the greatest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. Qatar is Hamas's agent. Qatar told Hamas to keep the hostages until Hamas gets a deal that allows Hamas to remain in power in Gaza. I am stunned that I have to be the one to explain this to everyone. Wake up. People are confused about Qatar. Are people under the impression that on October 7th, 2023, Qatari government officials in Doha walked down the street to the office where Hamas leaders were watching Al Jazeera and thanking God for the success of Hamas's invasion and said to them, guys, what you did was really bad. God does not approve of your actions. Release the hostages immediately. Because that's not what happened. At 3:15 p.m. Israel time on October 7th, 2023, long after it was clear that Hamas was carrying out barbaric atrocities and taking hostages, the Qatari Ministry of Foreign Affairs published a statement that said Israel was solely responsible for the ongoing escalation. It's still on the Qatari Foreign Ministry's website. Qatar condemned Israel on October 7th. Again, I don't know why I am the only one saying this. Perhaps you can tell me. A really funny moment happened on Sky News. UNRWA spokeswoman Juliet Touma was asked, can you guarantee that UNRWA is not infiltrated by Hamas? Listen closely to her answer and see if you can figure out what word she does not say. She said, look, we are a United Nations agency that abides according to international reviews by the humanitarian principle of neutrality. The word that she does not use in her answer is yes. She did not say, yes, I can guarantee that UNRWA is not infiltrated by Hamas. That's because UNRWA is infiltrated by Hamas. UNRWA is a Palestinian organization. Its entire workforce is local Palestinians. In Gaza, UNRWA relies on Hamas for security, and Hamas relies on UNRWA for food and supplies. The people who work for UNRWA and the people who work for Hamas are from the same families. Sometimes they are the same people. UNRWA is a Hamas employment service. It should be dismantled, and Palestinians should take responsibility for their own future rather than demand the whole world pay for them to be stuck in the past. If you're watching live now on our social media platforms, I'd be happy to take a few questions. And if I don't get to your questions, you can message me later after it's over. Yes, please.
Thank you, Daniel. Our first question comes from Mona on YouTube. Pro-Palestinians claim that Palestinian prisoners are mistreated in Israeli prisons. How are they actually treated?
There are many Palestinians who may even have an incentive to want to be in an Israeli prison. They are given all the rights entitled to prisoners anywhere, meals a day, education, and their lives are not just saved, they're insured. We can take one case of Yahya Sinwar. Yahya Sinwar became famous for killing other Palestinians back in the day, also Israelis. He was arrested, tried, put in jail, and in Israeli prison it was discovered that Yahya Sinwar had a brain tumor, and the Israeli government paid for his surgery so that Yahya Sinwar would be free of brain cancer. Yahya Sinwar was released in 2011 along with 1,000 other Hamas terrorists in exchange for one Israeli soldier. Yahya Sinwar, of course, went to become the head of Hamas and the mastermind of the October 7th massacre. So there's a message to every potential Palestinian terrorist is that not only can you be well treated in an Israeli prison, but one day you may go on to lead the Palestinian war against Israel.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Instagram. What's the situation with the displaced Israelis in the north, and how do the changes in the ceasefire with Lebanon affect them?
This is a great question to ask the residents of northern Israel themselves what they've been dealing with for the past 15 months. A lot of people are very focused on Gaza right now, and they're completely ignoring that Israel has not just been in a war against the Hamas regime in Gaza, but it's been a 7-front war, and one of those fronts is Lebanon, where the terrorist army Hezbollah opened a second front against Israel one day after the October 7th massacre, and Hezbollah fired thousands of rockets, anti-tank missiles, suicide drones into Israeli towns, cities, and more than 60,000 Israelis who live in the north of Israel along the Lebanese border had to flee because Hezbollah was shooting at their homes, quite literally. Many of these residents of northern Israel are still not moving back to their homes in the north. One reason might be that their home is completely destroyed and they need to find alternative housing. Another reason is they are not sure if Hezbollah is really gone for good from the border, and they do not want to be in a position where Hezbollah guys are waiting in the bushes a few football fields away with a guided anti-tank missile that they can shoot at a house at any time they want. So what we're waiting for now is to find out that Hezbollah is actually going to disarm, and that it will not be Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, but it will be the Lebanese government sending the Lebanese army to take responsibility for all of Lebanon. The ceasefire that Israel agreed to with Hezbollah requires Hezbollah to disarm. So if Hezbollah is not disarmed, then it's a violation of the ceasefire, and Israel's not going to wait for other people to enforce violations of the ceasefire. We've been here before. We cannot put our security in anyone else's hands. So the situation in northern Israel remains a big question mark. The ceasefire seems to be holding for now, even on a slight extension, but we need a real solution, and I'm hoping that that solution will be peace, not a piece of paper. Israel should be living in peace with Lebanon, and we shouldn't be having these silly conversations about a ceasefire and this term and this clause and this phrase and so on. It's common sense. The whole world should be calling for it. Peace between Lebanon and Israel.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Lynn on Instagram. Since we know what Qatar wants, why do we allow them to be the ones regulating the negotiations in Gaza?
Israel is in a very difficult position right now, and it's been in a very difficult position since October the 7th of 2023. Think about it this way. Let's say your local fire department comes to your house and starts a fire. And the firemen that start the fire get back in their truck and they go back to the fire department. You look out your window and you see that there's a fire in your front yard. And what do? You call the fire department. And then the fire department is the one that has the ability to put out the fire, and they come and put out the fire while sending you a big bill. That's similar to what the Qatari government has been doing. They have been fueling the flames and positioning themselves to be in a position to put out the flames. Hamas was based in Qatar on October 7th. Qatar was happy to host Hamas. Israel made the mistake of facilitating this arrangement where Qatar is able to send money to Gaza so that Gaza will have some type of minimum standard of living, that we can buy some sort of quiet. It was a mistake, but Qatar remains in a very strong position as the one that is able to speak to Hamas, to speak to the Americans, and to speak to Israel. It remains to be seen what our relationship with Qatar will be going forward. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs as much as possible about what a problem Qatar is, and I hope that people in Washington, in London, in the United Nations, and in Israel will hear and react accordingly. But in the meantime, Israel has agreed to a phased hostage ransom payment. We're only in phase one. We are trying to get as many hostages out of Hamas terror dungeons as possible, and only after this deal is over, or if it falls apart, or if Hamas breaks it, we'll be able to take a closer look at our relations with Qatar and how we were put in this position in the first place.
Thank you. This is our final question. Jesse on Instagram asks, what was your reaction to the spectacle put on by Hamas during the release of the young female soldiers on Saturday?
Rage, I would say, would be my response. And I think that should be the response of any moral human being, to watch the way that Hamas paraded its hostages, forced them to appear on stage, paraded them before a crowd of men with guns, masks. It was a final attempt to torture them, to intimidate them before releasing them in exchange for 50 terrorists apiece. So in exchange for those 4 women, 200 Palestinian terrorists are released from jail. I'm very happy that these 4 women are home. I wish that organizations like the Red Cross could do something small, like put out a press release or even a tweet, because if it wasn't just the Israeli women who Hamas put on stage, but the Red Cross completely participated in the ceremony. They parked exactly as Hamas wanted them to park. Their officials from the Red Cross went up on the stage to sign some release form to bring home the hostages. It was a very silly spectacle, and I think it demeans the Red Cross. And I'm hoping that they do not continue to participate in such a circus. But based on their record in the past 15 months, I'm not so confident that that will be the case. That's all the time we have for today on our live daily briefing. If you'd like to ask more questions, you can please follow me on the different social media platforms. I'm Daniel Rubenstein. Search for me on X, on YouTube, on Instagram, and so on. We are live every day from our Tel Aviv office at 3 p.m. We'll be back tomorrow. I wish you a lovely day.
Thanks for watching. Drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Until next time, stay informed and inspired. This is Djobnik signing off.